my name is Lauren Culley. I'm one of the co-owners of Fox in the Snow, and today we're doing something that we have never done before. We're giving a recipe away, and we're not only giving the recipe away, but we're going to show you how to make the recipe, and we're doing it in the Fox in the Snow kitchen. And it's something that we wanted to do for a really long time, but we haven't done it because we wanted to make sure it was the right pastry, and we wanted to make sure it was the right recipe, and it was something that translated really well to a home kitchen and would really set you up for success. Fox in the Snow biscuit is a layered biscuit. It is really buttery. It's sky high. It's a tank of a pastry, essentially. It's perfect. It's actually a perfect pastry, in my opinion. It's not very hard. Everything that you've learned about making biscuits is out the window with this recipe. So every biscuit recipe is essentially the same. It's dry butter and full fat buttermilk. It's just different iterations of those things that will get you different recipes. The thing that sets our recipe apart is the techniques that we use when you're using it. So we're gonna get started. We're gonna weigh out all of our dry. And really, in the Fox in the Snow kitchen, I would be weighing everything, and at home I weigh everything too, just for consistency's sake. But it's really not gonna make that much of a difference at the end of the day if you're making biscuits for people that you love and people that you're giving biscuits to, because at that point they really have no room to complain about you not weighing out the dries. So the other thing that this recipe has is a ton of salt. Almost every pastry that we make at Fox in the Snow has a lot of salt in it, and it's my belief that more salt the better when you're baking. It's just really gonna offset all of the sugars. So this recipe has a tablespoon plus a teaspoon of salt in it, that's a lot. That's a lot of salt. It's basically like the same amount of salt as if you were seasoning a piece of meat. That's how much salt there's. I really do think it's gonna make a really, really big difference. And then your leaveners, and like I said, we're not using any of this cold. You can pull this stuff out of the pantry and it's still gonna work just as well as if you're throwing it in the freezer, if you're throwing it out of the refrigerator. 3.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and then not very much sugar. We're gonna use about half of a tablespoon, about a couple of teaspoons of this. So this is our dry, and again, I would say conventional wisdom would say to sift your dry. We don't do that at the kitchen, and I don't do that at home. So it's all gonna get thrown in the food processor anyway, and so it's gonna get a pretty aggressive mix here in a second. And then I'm just gonna cube my butter, because again, it's gonna get put in the food processor, and so like a very even cubing is not, it's not essential. When we opened Fox in the Snow, there were 2 bakers. It was me and another baker. That was it. And we made every single pastry in the shop because we didn't know if people were even gonna come in at all. And so we needed recipes that were going to be really simple, not too many ingredients. They weren't gonna take too much time, and they weren't gonna be fussy. So I couldn't have a biscuit recipe where 4 of the ingredients needed to be frozen, or I needed to grate a bunch of butter and then incorporate it into my flour. And I just needed something that was gonna work really well every time, and that was actually easy for 2 people to do. All that I did was cube my butter. It's cold butter. It's not, I wouldn't stress about it. I wouldn't go crazy and have it be room temp, but cold butter is fine. And then we're gonna put all of our butter, all of our flour in the food processor. So we're just gonna pulse it, and I will say this, most biscuit recipes, most pie dough recipes in general, they're gonna say to blend it to the point, like to pulse to the point where you get pea-size shapes of butter, and nothing that we make has a pea-size shape of butter. Like we're going for like a walnut size, pretty big size. So it's gonna get loud for a second. So we're just gonna give it a couple pulses, and I'm gonna see about what size I'm working with. All right, so this feels pretty good to me. So what we're looking at is pretty big. I mean, there's some pretty big pieces of butter in there, and that's the way that I like it. So I'm not gonna take it any smaller than that, and I'm not gonna break it up either. to me, this is really gonna help with the layering, but at the end of the day, it's also going to help you taste the butter, which is, let's all be honest, the reason that you're eating a pastry in the first place. So, there we go. Jeez, that's like an Olympic sport. Okay, so once we get it to this, and I can tell you right now this is cold, so it's cold to the touch, which feels pretty good to me. But like I said, I'm not gonna go crazy and start working with it too quickly. I'm gonna make sure that the flour is really absorbing the buttermilk, and that's more important to me than the temperature of it. So I'm gonna grab some buttermilk, and we're gonna start with about 2 cups of buttermilk. And I know that some recipes also will have you incorporate a little bit at a time, just in case you don't need all of it. But that frustrates me because I feel like never once have I not needed all of it, and so I just put all of the 2 cups in. I'm just gonna go ahead and add all of my buttermilk. We're really just working it to the point where it's gonna be shaggy, but I'm gonna make sure there are no little pieces at the bottom. So this is in a traditional biscuit recipe. This is where you would be working really quickly and you would be like lightly fluffing it, and that's just not the way that I bake. It's not the way that we work. So you're not gonna have to be afraid of overworking it. It's gonna get to the point where we can hold it together, because the last thing that you want is to dump this thing out and then have all of these tiny little pieces of biscuit go everywhere. So if I can get it to the point where I can pick it up and for the most part there aren't any little pieces at the bottom, then I'm in good shape. And this is also, we use a lamination technique in a lot of what we do, which is really just folding and folding and folding. And we're just gonna get those big, big pieces of butter that we had, and they're just gonna get to the point where they are layering on top of each other, and they're gonna release steam in the oven, and then they're gonna get really, really tall. They're really gonna soar. They're a tall, tall biscuit. So I'm gonna go through here. Look at this. Look at how attractive this is. But once I take it out of the bowl, you're really gonna see all of the like Dalmatian effect that the butter gives you, and it's adorable and beautiful, and it's gonna be great. So once I take it out, you can see that there's almost nothing left in the bowl, which is exactly what you want. And I have it on a floured surface, and then I'm really just gonna try to get it out to like a rectangle shape. It's not too fussy. You're not gonna have to take a ruler out and make sure that you're making sure everything's exactly the right length. This is where our technique comes in. This is where the biscuit gets different than other biscuits. We're gonna do 6 folds on this biscuit, which is a lot. And again, I'm sure that somewhere a biscuit maker is gasping out of horror that we're gonna fold this guy 6 times, but we are. And after we fold it 6 times, we're gonna take the scraps of those 6 times, we're gonna fold those again. So we're really gonna go to town with these guys. Let's say we get it out about this far. So we're gonna do a tri-fold just to get us started. All right. When we also first opened, we didn't have a sheeter and we didn't have any of the equipment that's gonna make it easy to roll these enormous pieces of dough. And this was all that we used to roll everything. Like big pieces of dough, big pieces of biscuits, and we were only using a rolling pin. And I swear that I had the back muscles of an Olympic swimmer, because working dough is hard. Working a lot of dough is hard, and then working a lot of dough for 8 hours a day is insanely hard. So we've done 3 folds. Our 4th fold is a left to right fold. And I'm just making sure that it gets all incorporated. Okay, so now that we've done a left to right, so then we're gonna do a top down. So that's our 5th. All right, and then we're gonna just do one more, our 6th fold. We're just gonna go left to right again. I'm always pinching these sides. I don't know that that even matters, but everybody just has their own way of doing it. So basically what we've done is we've just created like layer after layer after layer of these enormous chunks of butter that then when we put it in the oven, it'll fly to the moon. And if it misses, it'll land among the stars or whatever. So we're gonna get about 7 biscuits out of this, 8 biscuits. If you really wanna go for it, you can get about 8 biscuits out of this. Your 8th biscuit, heads up, will probably be very ugly, but you can eat that one or give it to the person you don't like. So we're gonna get it about this big, and I'm gonna start with cutting about 4. We use like a 3-inch biscuit cutter, which I think are hard to find actually. I don't know why, but we use a 3-inch biscuit cutter. Any vintage biscuit cutter is actually ideal. Like if your grandma has a biscuit cutter, that's probably the one you should be using. This is a tank of a biscuit, so we're gonna make them really big. A lot of biscuits are very tiny, and you'll see biscuit makers like doing this with it. We can't do that. Ours are so big, it's like we have to give each one all of our undivided attention. Advice is correct. You go straight down, you don't seal it off. You want it to come straight down and straight up. All right, you're gonna get about 4 of these guys. This is, oh my gosh, look at that. You would probably be tempted to eat that as is. It's so good. You can see every single layer. You can also see those enormous chunks of butter in them, but then you can also sort of see like there's the foundation for what it's gonna look like. Like all of those layers will still be completely visible. Oh, that's the best one. I'll give that one away. These are beautiful. So that's your first round. Chances are these are probably gonna be your prettiest ones. So then what we do with these is we're just gonna squeeze together the negative space. Again, people are gasping. Don't make biscuits out of these re-rolls, they say. Watch me, I say, it's gonna be so good. So then we turn it over to the side. You're gonna probably get another 2 biscuits out of this. We're gonna brush these with our egg wash, and we keep a pre-made egg wash all of the time. You can just have this sitting in your fridge. It keeps, like I said, it keeps pretty well. And then we also egg wash everything before we put it in the freezer. And at this point, after you egg wash, you could stick these with the egg wash in a bag, like a plastic bag, or you could plastic wrap these, and these will freeze so well, and they'll freeze for a really long time. You could even make this the night before and freeze overnight, and then you can pop them in the oven from frozen, and they'll be gorgeous, and they'll keep their shape really, really well. So we just pop them in exactly as is right now, or like I said, you can freeze them. We don't put anything on the top until they come out hot from the oven. And this is another place where this is like new school baking for biscuits. We do not cook these at a super high temperature. So a lot of the time biscuits will have you cook at this really, really high temperature, so you get this blast of heat and the biscuit goes straight up. But for us, we actually cook it at 350. So what I think really sends these biscuits into their own category, like really sends them over the top, is that when we take them out of the oven while they're still piping hot, we douse them with a honey butter, and it's gonna give it that like tacky, shiny, beautiful look to it, but then it's also gonna go all the way down the sides so that every single layer that you take a bite of is gonna have a little bit of the jam that we put on it, but then it's also gonna have a little bit of that salted honey. So you don't end up with this bite where you really just want the bottom of the biscuit or the top. It's like the whole thing is perfect. So it's super, super simple. Again, like the name of the game here. We're gonna melt a stick of butter and a cup of honey. That's gonna be our honey butter. One thing I do like to do, I don't know if this is bad or not, but I spray the inside of my measuring cup with a non-stick spray before I do anything that involves like a corn syrup or a honey or something that's sticky, because I find that it releases a lot easier. And we don't use fancy honey like this. You could use honey bear honey, and I bet it would taste nostalgic and perfect. Honey to me is so beautiful every single time, and then the honey with the butter is like, really elevates it. They pair so nicely. So it's gonna get like, it's gonna turn into a little bit of a liquid, which is great. That's exactly what you want it to do, because you want it to be able to run down the whole biscuit. All right, that's that's it. It's super, super easy. And then we put it on with a pastry brush, which I actually think is maybe one of my favorite kitchen utensils, is a pastry brush. And I never thought that I would use it as much as I do. If you don't have a pastry brush, it is really so loose that you really could spoon it over the top, and it would work just as well. Any jam's gonna work as long as it's a more spreadable kind of jam, because you want it to do that. Get out of here. But you can already tell, like, you can pull this apart and it's like, look at these layers. Layer, layer. Man, but which one? They're so good. I mean, look at that. We could peel each individual layer off if you wanted to. And there's the honey on the side, so it's still super tacky. It's a perfect pastry. And if you look, because there's like almost like a lamination happening in the top like there would be with a pie crust. So you get a real crunch. It's so good. I haven't even had any of the jam and it's so good.